The structure of a community is measured and described in terms of species composition and species diversity. Communities are groups of populations of different species living close enough to interact. Interspecific competition may be positive for one species, negative, or neutral, and include competition, which is an interaction between species, often when resources are scarce; predation, an interaction between species where the predator benefits and the prey is harmed; herbivory, which is interaction between a species where the herbivore benefits and the plant is harmed; symbiosis, which is when the individuals of two or more species live in direct contact; parasitism, where the parasite benefits and the host is harmed; mutualism, which is an interaction where both species benefit; and commensalism, where one benefits and the other is neither helped nor harmed. Interspecific competition for resources occurs when resources are in short supply. Competition is an interaction between species involved. Central to the idea of competition and community structure are these two concepts of competitive exclusion principle, where two species are vying for resources, and eventually the one with the slight reproductive advantage will eliminate the other, and then an ecological niche, which is the total sum of the biotic and abiotic resources that the species use in its environment. Species diversity is the number of different species in a community and the relative abundance of each species. A community with an even species abundance is more diverse than one which one or two species are abundant and the remainder are rare. Dominant species are the ones with the highest biomass, which is the sum weight of all the members of the population, or the most abundant. A trophic structure describes the system or organization of organisms into different trophic levels based on the amount of energy the organism consumes. Organisms can be categorized into different trophic levels with the trophic structure. Essentially, trophic structure shows us the feeding relationship between different organisms, both producers and consumers, within a set area and time. A trophic pyramid, a food web, and a food chain could all be used to describe trophic structure. Simpson's Diversity Index is a measure of the diversity in an area. It takes into account both the number of different species as well as the abundance of each. The D represents the diversity index, the lowercase n represents the number of individuals for each species, and the uppercase N stands for the total number of individuals. The diversity of species within an ecosystem may influence the organization of the ecosystem. Biodiversity is a measure of the diversity of life in a particular area. Communities and ecosystems with high biodiversity are more resilient to change. Declining biodiversity can result in decreased stability of an ecosystem, extinction of one or more species, which may cause the decline or extinction of others, and some niches may open up for other animals to use. The human impacts of biodiversity are habitat destruction, population, urbanization, and infrastructure development, such as dams, transmission lines, roads, and climate change. It could also lead to the sixth mass extinction because of the 50% wildlife extinct in the last 40 years. How population extinctions on local levels are even higher, and how global conservation efforts are needed to prevent ecosystem collapse. Keystone species, producers, and essential abiotic and biotic factors contribute to the maintaining of the diversity of an ecosystem. The effects of keystone species on the ecosystem are disproportionate relative to their abundance in the ecosystem, and when they are removed from the ecosystem often collapses. Keystone species are organisms that have a large impact on their habitat and other organisms, especially considering their size or small numbers. The removal of a keystone species can also cause trophic cascades. The types of keystone species are keystone predator, keystone prey, ecosystem engineer, keystone mutualist, and keystone plants. A keystone predator example of this would be a sea otter helping maintain a forest. An example of a keystone prey is how an Arctic krill are critical for whales and fish. An ecosystem engineer would be how beavers maintain habitats. A keystone mutualist would be an example of plants and pollinators. And keystone plants are critical resources. An example of this could be the cactus provides water for the desert animals.